Welcome to this special edition of Daily Pulse, where we keep your finger on the pulse of the latest breaking news and the news they're keeping from you. Brought to you by the Vigilant Fox and Zeee Media. I'm your host, Maria Zeee. We are living through the greatest financial heist in human history. What Americans and people all across the world don't realize is that the dollar in their wallet represents debt, not value. It's a calculated system designed to silently siphon wealth from hardworking families into the coffers of financial elites who manipulate the currency at will. And that fiat currency, ladies and gentlemen, is on the brink. Joining us tonight to tell us what we can do about it is Bill Armour from Genesis Gold. Bill Armour, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you. Well, I love conversations about real money, and I am looking forward to having that conversation with you. I'd love to hear from you, Bill, a little bit about your history and what made you get into this industry specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an Army veteran. I was in for 8 years, did military intelligence, got out, actually worked in finance, and then also secondarily in vocational ministry. So my view on the world has really shaped my coming into precious metals, understanding that what we see, and this is partly from my intelligence background, what we see in this money system is orchestrated both from within and from without, and that we are going to see a dramatic change in the financial system, and wanting to help people on the spiritual side of that protect themselves with, as you alluded to just a moment ago, honest money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. Talk to us a little bit about the deception of the current fiat system, a little bit of the history there.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is nothing new. Fiat has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. What is new is the scale at which fiat has grown in our country, and it's kind of like a cancer. It starts small and grows and grows and grows. And ever since the Fed was created, I mean, we've dealt with this in the past with the Second National Bank that Andrew Jackson basically went to war against. But we're dealing with it now as well, where that cancer has grown. It has produced money that is backed by nothing. These are not elected officials. These are people that are bought and paid for by elites that are creating money out of thin air to further goals of themselves, keep American people down.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I'm just wanting to cross-check this fact with you here that since the Federal Reserve was established, the dollar has lost over 96% of its purchasing power. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And it's important to remember that that is basically an unseen tax. Is if you have a dollar in your hand and they create 10 more dollars, you haven't lost your dollar, but that dollar has lost value. And so they have been, it's one of the most egregious thefts in American history, is that they have been stealing from people, mostly without their recognition of that for years and years and years, to the point now that if you have had your money has, they've stolen 96 plus percent of everything you have, and they will continue to take more.
I guess people are waiting on adjustments to interest rates and things of this nature, always holding their breath for those sorts of things. But the situation seems to just constantly not improve. And I wonder where these trends are leading, the complication of things like tariffs, the effects that has on the everyday person, the consumer. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I would say that Jerome Powell and his insistence on not cutting rates is not based on any real data. I mean, that we saw this with the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, that they've been basically making numbers up out of thin air. So this is nothing new. This is a tried and true tactic by the left and by globalists. But what we are seeing is that the reason he doesn't want to bring interest rates down is it's everyday things. It keeps things expensive. It keeps people in positions where they can't purchase homes, where they're forced to rent, which I think most viewers would probably understand that there is a growing movement among major financial players to absorb and buy up commercial multifamily housing and to force
Yes.
people into rentals. So this is all systemic here in trying to trap Americans into this debt entanglement.
Yes, you're right. And if anyone isn't familiar with that particular topic, please go back and watch our report on the build to rent scheme. This is happening in America, in Australia, in the UK. It's happening worldwide, essentially creating generations of renters with no intention of, and of course, you look and it's BlackRock and those types of figures behind this, and it's creating, they're building these with the intention of never selling them. So they will forever be rentals, preparing for a future where I guess you own nothing and you'll be happy, apparently. But you know, it's interesting, Bill, because people that have grown up, maybe even in my generation, look at this situation and they haven't really known any different. This is just how things have always been. They've always gotten more expensive. The dream of owning your own piece of land, your house with the white picket fence, has been out of reach for so many, especially the younger generation, throughout our entire lives. But what's interesting is that I guess most people don't know the history as well. So until 1971, dollars were a claim on real gold. So this is Nixon basically severed that connection, and so people aren't really accustomed to real money anymore unless they're people that actually understand precious metals and invest their time and their money learning about them. Talk to us a little bit about that, if you will.
Happy to. So what I would add there is that if you tie something to metals, you're not going to see this kind of inflation. You tie this to tangibles, right? Because you are forced to be honest. You're forced to be prudent in that way. Whereas if you can create money out of thin air, then suddenly you've detracted. So again, I just want to reiterate this fact that it's not about things just get more expensive. What is really happening is they are stealing from you year over year over year. So when you look and say, man, gas is so much more expensive than it used to be, what has really happened is they have stolen from you year over year over year. And now what you have in your bank account, even if it says the same number, has been depleted, 5, 10, 15%. So this is, again, a grand theft that occurs every day, and people are completely blind to it for the most part.
I think it's vital for people to understand the sort of end of that agenda, which you just sort of mentioned, the build to rent scheme and the you'll own nothing sort of agenda that's still really rolling forward all across the world. As this, I guess, this current system is eventually going to implode, and I'd like to talk to you about that. But this, as we look at all of these things and face these facts of just the reality of what we're living in, it's not a hopeless situation. And I think that it's important to understand the principles. I mean, this is something that you stand for, the principles that God really set up all the way back to Genesis 2:12. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, God declaring that gold of the land is good is kind of a central theme that you're going to see throughout all the Old Testament. And we see gold in Genesis all the way to Revelation. I mean, that's the name of the company is intentional there to get back to the root of how God designed the monetary system, which was honest money. The idea being that you can't steal from people. We can go into unequal weights and measures. I mean, there's many different avenues to go there. But this was God's ideal system because it is God made, not man made. Because anything that man creates, we will corrupt. So we want to stay true to what the Lord has put in front of us and given to us.
Right. And I mean, that's, we have the mentions of gold, but it's applicable to all precious metals. And particularly, I think, when it comes to silver, people who heeded the early warnings, I certainly am grateful that I started getting interested in silver when I did, because it's resulted in really fantastic returns for people. And that's going to be a growing industry as well, because the amount of silver, the supply that they need, they're not necessarily, there just isn't going to be enough for when it comes to military, when it comes to robotics, and who's going to have the power of what that silver costs? Well, the people that have it. So there's a lot of people that have been stocking up on silver. Talk to us a bit about that market.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there's many different places that you can look, to find where silver is we're becoming more and more aware of silver's industrial uses. I believe it's Samsung that's just put out a new battery. It takes about a kilo of silver per battery. Mark my words, within 5, 10 years, it will completely replace the lithium ion battery. that we all know and are very familiar with. But we're finding that silver's industrial capabilities, electrical capabilities far exceed what we had anticipated. So people want to have, the thing that people are going to want 5, 10 years in the future. You never want to wait until people need it. You want to be ahead of that. And so that would be a big draw for the industrial use of silver. And then on the flip side, we have great technology that's, can scan the Earth's crust and find metals. But what we're finding is a lot of the silver deposits that we knew were there, we're finding a lot less silver than we had anticipated. So there is a growing separation between the amount of silver we actually realize there is and the usefulness or the demand for silver. So that tension there is only set to drive the price of silver much, much higher.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it already has. Just looking at it over the past couple of years, silver's just shot up and it's only going to go higher. So I hope that people consider that it's still possible to take advantage of that market. I just think it's wise in this day and age to be diversifying wealth. And I mean, it always has been, but even more so now because things are just so uncertain. And I want to ask you, in terms of diversifying wealth, when we look at something like inflation's hidden warfare, the deliberate understating of inflation to hide the truth from Americans, and again, a problem all across the world, all across the West. How does first of all, what is what are the real mechanics behind the inflation versus what we're presented with or what we're told about inflation, and then how does diversifying actually shield people from that?
Well, it's a great question because a lot of people look at this and they look at their pensions or Social Security or this or that, and they say, I've got this much per month that I can live on, so I'm going to be just fine. But the reality is that inflation warfare is designed to, again, that amount may not change, but what that does for you changes dramatically. And so if all you have is you're set up in pension, Social Security, et cetera, is that over time you're losing that war. They are gaining ground on you to a point where they will force you to sell your home, et cetera. All these different things to remove value from you. So that theft is an ongoing warfare that is occurring. And if you don't have assets in place to counteract that and to profit from that, for instance, gold and silver, when they are taking away from you, the value of tangibles are going up. So it's almost like a counterbalance to that. So if you don't have assets like that, then you are guaranteed to lose the war. You've lost before you've even fought.
I've never heard it actually articulated that well. It's a counterbalance to the ongoing theft. That's such a great point, and not only a counterbalance, but you actually end up better off. This is just what I've found over time. So, about the money machine, right? We all know that the shadowy cabal known as the Federal Reserve, and I guess every single, when we look at central banks or the World Bank, all of these money masters are really pulling the strings of so much of what goes on. We've had discussions about private equity and how private equity is destroying communities and coming up and buying mom and pop businesses. And this is really accelerated since the COVID era as well. Then we have these banksters just constantly, it seems like everything they do brings more destruction, to be honest. And it seems systematic in a lot of ways. And I'm curious, how does that fit with or not so much how does it fit, but how, when we look at that and we look at, for example, China selling off a bunch of US bonds, no longer, it seems like this is a growing phenomenon. And then we have the banksters pulling the strings in the background. Are they going to be able to make it look like the US dollar is still strong even when we have all these people selling off bonds? Or is that eventually going to crack? Sorry, I know that was a very long way of asking that. I just wanted to set the stage for the viewers, because this is a little bit of a complex topic, understanding stocks and bonds and things like that. If you want to go into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So can they keep the facade up at the start? And the answer, that really depends on the people listening right now. That's the honest answer there, is it really depends on how much are we willing to educate ourselves, educate our friends, take steps to defend against this. Because if we're a passive audience, then we will absolutely lose and they will continue to get away with it. If we continue to, friends and family here, we have to be the ones to speak out against this and educate them, because otherwise we're just doomed. I mean, frankly. So I think that that's my experience in the military as well, is that you have to be a fighter. You can't be passive. So get out there, educate. And even just voting. I mean, that's another thing. Just getting the right people in there. Donald Trump was a huge chink in the system there for what they had plans for. I do believe that had that we not gotten him back in, this would be a very different country today. So you've got other countries as well. I know you just alluded to that. This is one thing I saw and one thing I learned as I did intel was other countries absolutely are determined for the downfall of the United States and will work tirelessly to accomplish that with whomever they want and whoever they can. And in our case, a lot of times that is these systemic elites that exist in the world that are, selling off our country in bits and pieces. They make a great pairing and they work very well together for the destruction of our country.
If this trend of dumping US bonds continues, what's going to happen to the American dollar?
Well, you'll see eventually, a final crash. I mean, if you sell off enough of those bonds, and China does have a tremendous amount of bonds, and we've allowed them, again, I think that's intentional as well. We've allowed them to accumulate such a large position in this. You sell off those bonds, you see a bond market crash, the dollar, people lose confidence in that, and you see suddenly we're forced into these something like this BRICS currency that they're rolling out looks a lot better to foreign countries, and they can start to leverage that. So the scary part here is that we're so far behind the eight ball. And I think Trump is doing a tremendous job of working us around that. But make no mistake, we are in a losing position right now, fighting to get to a better one.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Just looking at all of the warning signs, the failing banks, these things are still happening. And in the meantime, Bill, what we have is the growing control grid, the growing digital grid, and the push for things like CBDCs, the push for things like, government regulation of digital currency. And there are a lot of cryptocurrencies that are sort of fighting back on that and maintaining sovereignty, and all of that is happening. In the meantime, there's this real tug of war going on. But when we talk government regulated digital money, we're in an absolute world of trouble. In fact, I can tell you, the Reserve Bank of Australia is now not only, they've done their digital currency pilot, their CBDC pilot rather, now they're doing a pilot for currency that expires. So, if I can just articulate this briefly for the audience, you're talking about what the World Economic Forum, IMF, World Bank have previously spoken about, where not only can they program your money to be able to buy whatever they want you to buy, whatever they want to allow you to buy. So, for example, no meat, no dairy, no real sustenance, no ammunition, they say. But then they can also make it expire within a very short period. So you have to buy whatever you need within this time frame. It's absolutely terrifying, Bill. So what are your thoughts on that and the steps that are happening worldwide on that? And also, how does having precious metals counter that?
Sure. So this just goes down to the continued attack on the world, really not even just America, it's the world for control and dominance. I mean, they want, as you mentioned, own nothing and be happy. You go to work, you work, ad nauseum, you come home, you own nothing, you eat, crickets or whatever it might be, and you go to sleep and you wake up the next day and you repeat it and you live your entire life. That is the designed goal for these people. And they treat us like cattle, and they absolutely will continue to do that. So that is the plan. That is, make no mistake. Now, how gold separates you from that is if they cannot take what you have, and people might say, well, Bill, if they really want it, they're going to come and get it. And I say, where are they going to look? I mean, at least with metals here, you've got some control over that. So I think taking the passive, throwing your shoulders up and shrugging and saying, well, I can't do anything to stop it. I think that's a quitter's attitude. The best thing you can do is make any steps you can. And in metals, you've got a chance at least to fight back against that, to have something, whole other conversation. But I do believe that there are going to be parallel economies. There are going to be those that have submitted to the regime, and there's going to be those that have not and have access to things like metals and are able to barter and trade. And I think that's going to end up being something we look back on with hindsight tremendously fondly of the people that did do that.
I absolutely agree. And this is something I'm very passionate about. When I started getting into gold and silver, I didn't have a lot of money to invest, and I was just buying little amounts because I thought, okay, when things really go south, this little one silver coin will get me a loaf of bread, maybe. And so, just little things like that. And you mentioned, well, if they really want it, they can come and find it. There are some really ingenious things that people have come up with where you can actually not only have your reserves underground, for example. Now we're getting really into the prepper stuff, but it's good. You can have your reserves underground and then in a box so that if someone was to come, I don't know exactly what it's made of. Maybe you know better than I do, Bill. But if someone was to come to try to detect it on your land, they wouldn't be able to. It shields the detectors. Do you know what material that's made of by any chance?
I don't know the science behind it, but you're exactly right. There are absolutely ways here because it's only searching for certain metals, and there's other metals, of course, that deflect the beams that are going down into the ground. So yeah, absolutely something. And we go over many different strategies with clients on how they can preserve money. But at the end of the day, we'll work with people here. I mean, that's what we do is we'll help people figure out strategies that are effective. We've been doing this very long time. We've got a tremendous amount of experience on this. On the team here. I mean, our owners have been doing this for, 50 plus years. So tremendous amount of experience and expertise on how to protect your metals. So the first step is just getting them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are many, many different creative ways that you can let's just say get creative with where you put them. I want to ask you about the banking system in general. We mentioned before, I think I brought up, we've seen banks fail, Silicon Valley Bank, and others in recent times, and many other banks are sort of on the brink as well. How close are we to this sort of banking collapse?
We are always on a tightrope. I think people don't realize just how, even when they think things are good, they don't realize just how much of a tightrope we walk. Any given day, and this is not to incite panic, this is just a fact. Any given day, a bank does not have all of the funds available for depositors. That's reality. That's the world we live on. It's how they make their money. And so if all of enough people suddenly need their money or want their money at one time, that's how you get a run on the banks. That's how you got Silicon Valley Bank or any of these others that have failed recently. So all it takes is a little bit of distrust. And so when you have really two options with any of this. You're either early or you're late. It's a phrase that was given to me in the military, and I think that's such a great way to think about things. Is with any of this, you are either early or you are late. You are either the person that has done something and protected it a little early and you're ahead of the curve, or you're not. You made your flight or you missed your flight. And so when you look at this and you see that the banking system, we teeter daily on this. I mean, bonds are upside down right now, long-term treasuries. These are all, numerically for a bank, really bad. Their books look atrocious, but they don't talk about that. You don't see that on mainstream media because, again, a couple people get an idea here that they don't feel comfortable and they go pull their money out and they do something else. They do something like gold, and all of a sudden the whole house of cards collapses.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've seen it happen. We've seen it far too many times actually. And it's important for people to also know the amount that's insured, the amount of your money that's insured by the banks is nowhere near as much as what you may have in the bank often. And if a bank was to go belly up and there was, I think the bailout money, not so much bail-in. I always get confused between those two terms. But anyway, my point is what you have in your bank is likely not fully insured. And the government's not going to help if mass amounts of banks go belly up at the same time. They're just not. So it's wise to prepare ahead of time. I want to hear your thoughts on the history of fiat currency, just generally every single time failing throughout history eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not hard to grasp when you really think of the mathematics of it. If you have something, because every currency, every fiat currency starts initially as a gold-backed currency. Every currency that's been a major world reserve currency at one point was gold-backed. And then at some point, they've accumulated enough power where people, want to use that currency or used to using that currency, and they finally separate from gold and they become a fiat currency. And then over time, human greed kicks in and they continue to overspend and overcreate. And eventually people wake up and they have the same epiphany that most Americans are having right now and people across the world, which is my money has been stolen from me and is being stolen from me. And eventually there is a revolt. Sometimes that is a literal revolt, or sometimes that's as simple as they pick a new currency. And so the reason it can't ever stay is because these people cannot be prudent. They can't help but take more. It's the human greed problem. So unless you believe, as an American, that suddenly the World Economic Forum, the World Reserve Banks, all of these different places, the Fed, that they're suddenly going to wake up and think we have enough, then you have reason for concern, and you should realize that it will fail eventually.
Yeah, yeah. I equate it to being financially prepared. I equate to sort of being prepared with food, with water, with backup power. It's almost, you can look at it as number one, a wise investment for sure. Number two, an insurance policy. These are two ways that I kind of look at this, because if the system crashes, and mind you, these are just digits on your bank manager's screen. They can just be wiped with the press of a button. And so this is an insurance policy against something like that. I mean, an EMP hits, what happens then? You can't access, or a cyber attack. I mean, these things are on the rise as tensions between countries continue to rise, and they start to wage things like cyber attack warfare or EMPs or something like that. I mean, everything could go belly up overnight. This is an insurance policy against that. Keep cash, keep precious metals on hand, and you are going to fare a lot better than someone who's depending on just the digits on their iPhone screen.
Right. I just want to jump in real quick because you're exactly right. And seeing, again, Intel background, seeing, what other countries are capable in terms of cyber warfare, particularly China, and realizing that if they really wanted to incite, I mean, before, there was ever anything beyond that, they wouldn't just start by, putting troops on our borders. What they would do is they would sow chaos. And one of the main ways they would do that is attack, power infrastructure. They would go after things like, I mean, imagine if suddenly everyone woke up and their bank accounts had been wiped. Think about the chaos that would create. So when you're exactly right when you talk about an insurance policy. I always tell people gold and silver is kind of the solid foundation that you build your financial home on, because it's the one thing, that ground is not going anywhere. The house can blow away, this and that, but the solid ground, the land beneath it, is not going anywhere. You can always rebuild the home if you've got the land. If you don't have the land, if you don't have the solid foundation, you're in real trouble. So I just wanted to agree with that. And then just get back to one other piece here, and that's just the national debt, just so people understand the scale of the problem here. $37 trillion. Trillion, they're not human numbers. I know people hear this all the time and they just think it's going up, but these are not human numbers. These are basically made up numbers. They're so big you can't even comprehend them. And with that, the interest on that $37 trillion now equates to the single largest budget item on the U.S. spending year over year, which means we spend more on that than the military, which is an unbelievable statistic to think that we are spending more just servicing the interest, not paying the debt back, just the interest itself, than we are on our military. This is not a sustainable model.
Right. I agree. And I can't give a time frame. I don't think you can either. But when you look at the trajectory and you look at the fact that it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, there's going to come a point where it can't continue like this. And there's only so long that the facade can be maintained. Ed Dowd is someone that has said that for a very, very long time. There's only so long that the facade can be maintained. I want to talk to you about the possibility of people looking at their IRAs or 401ks when it comes to gold. What are some recent actions that have changed that for people? Some new steps that President Trump has taken, and why is this a good option for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, one piece that makes it a great time right now is Trump's recent executive order there that is passing to make companies' 401ks allow precious metals in there. That's going to drive almost $9 trillion into the ability to access metals. So anytime, again, that's just supply and demand. There's a boatload of people that I talk to even on a daily basis say, I really want to get metals. I just wasn't able to in the past. And as soon as those floodgates open, you're going to see this massive increase in demand, which will drive the price of precious metals up. So great time to be able to get in and do this before that. In terms of just the other side of the economic, coin, things going badly. You're right. No one knows the time or date. You have to keep your oil ready, your gunpowder dry, because it will happen. And as I mentioned earlier, you're either early or you're late. There's the two options, and you have to decide whether you're someone who's going to be early or someone who is going to be late. But we are at a crossroads, absolutely.
I like that
In,
saying. Sorry, I just wanted to interject because I've been saying it's not too late until it's too late. Yours is you're either early or you're late. I like both of them. Go on, sorry.
Right. No, yeah, you're exactly right. And I would just say, in terms of how we help people do that, it's very, very simple. You would just go ahead and reach out to us, Genesis Gold, 1-800-200-GOLD. Give us a call. We're happy to diagnose, see if this is something that is possible for you. IRAs, 401ks, and then obviously potential cash purchases as well. Any of the above we can assist with. And I always say, if you're not sure, call and check, because the last thing you want is to find out, a couple years down the road that this was an option that you missed out on.
Well, it's in my opinion, I'm not giving financial advice here, but in my opinion, it's infinitely safer than the stock market. It's infinitely safer than other sort of volatile investment options. And we were previously warning as well. We had a guest on who knows a lot about private equity, and she was educating the viewers on, if your 401k, IRA or 401k is being invested in that direction, you could be in a world of trouble. All of your wealth could be taken from under you. Whereas if you go down the option of gold or silver, that is tangible assets in your hand that are not going to depreciate. Gold will never go to zero. It's just never going to happen. And so, there may be fluctuations, but to go down to zero, it cannot happen because it's a tangible asset. So it is one of the safest investment options, in my personal opinion. I really want to encourage people to go to goldbiblepulse.com. That's goldbiblepulse.com. You can claim your free The Bible and Gold book as part of this. Send in your information, and one of their specialists will be in touch with you, really hold your hand throughout this whole process. It's well worthwhile speaking to someone about this. I have been encouraging people to take this very, very seriously, Bill, for some time now. I'm kind of sounding the alarm a lot louder these days than I was when I first started, because all signs are pointing to incredibly volatile times ahead. And the one thing that's consistently continued to go up, even when we look at the '08 financial crisis, even when we look at what happened during 2020, gold and silver were the hedge of protection for people. And I think that that's going to continue to be the case. Your closing words.
I just think we're at a historic crossroads here. There will be two people. There will be the haves and the have-nots, the people who were early, the people who were late. And I think that my biblical understanding on this really paints, and obviously Genesis as a whole, we paint this picture that we urge you guys, please pray on this, whatever, talk to your friends, family, but this is something to take very seriously. I always tell my clients too, this is, really, this is not your money. This is the Lord's money. So do with it, not, don't be cavalier about it, because it's all a blessing to you. So I would just say, take seriously what God has said, and what you're seeing around you.
That's such a great point. What is the best way to be a steward of what God has given us with the knowledge that we have of which direction things are going? Very, very important consideration. Bill Armour, we are so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Again, that link is goldbiblepulse.com. That's goldbiblepulse.com. Head over there today to claim your free The Bible and Gold book. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. We are extremely grateful to all of our viewers and supporters of this show. We air every single weeknight at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we plan on continuing to bring you the latest breaking news and the news they're keeping from you. We are backed by you, the viewer. That way we can always tell you the truth, no holds barred. The way to support us to stay independent is by shopping directly with our sponsors who make this show possible. Their links are in the description below. Make sure to follow Vigilant Fox on X at Vigilant Fox, as well as Substack to stay up to date with the latest breaking news. Follow Zeee Media on Rumble, where we also air this show each weekday and post our other deep dives. Follow at ZEE_media on X, and as always, all of our content is also on zeemedia.com. Join us every weeknight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Tell everyone about it, and as always, keep your finger on the pulse with the Daily Pulse. Good night.